says, "Vayhili shor v'chamor, soin ve'ever b'shivcha." So somehow Yaakov tells Esav, "You better be careful. I have shor v'chamor." So the Baal HaTurim says, "V'yisker minim acherim." He doesn't mention anything else. El remez liYosef shu sitlei shel Esav. When he says Shiur, Yosef is the Shiur because the pasuk says B'chor Shiur Chodroloi. So that's Yosef. So he says Vayhili Shiur. He's telling Esav, I have Shiur, I have Yosef. So now I can fight you. Okay, and so the Baal HaTurim says. He says when it says in the pasuk Li Shiur, Li Shiur, the word Li Shiur is the same gematria of Shenoilad Yosef. So he's telling him Yosef was born, so you better watch out, right? Now you're in trouble. So you have to know what's the deal. Why is Yosef the one who's going to fight Esau? And you have to understand at this time Yosef was about a 6-year-old boy, right? So what's he going to fight him with? His matchbox cars? How is a 6-year-old boy going to take care of Esau, who's a mass murderer, and he's got professional experience? And so what does it mean? And so you have to understand the whole situation over here. But the emphasis is like this: it's always Yosef who seems to be fighting against Esau. So we understand that Amalek is a descendant of Esau because Eliphaz was Amalek's father. So you find that the Chazal tell us Ein Esav Noifel El Lazarish Rachel. Esav is only going to fall to Rachel's children. So what do you find? When Amalek came the first time, who did Moshe pick to fight them? Yeshua. Why Yeshua? Because Yeshua comes from Ephraim, the son of Yosef, right? When Shaul HaMelech is told to fight Amalek, Shaul comes from Binyamin, also a child of one of Rachel's children, right? So Viter, that's who he's picking, right? Then you find the Osid Lavoi. First of all, Mordechai, the story of Purim. Mordechai comes from Shevet Binyamin, also Viter from Rachel, right? It has to be from Rachel. Yosef comes from Rachel, Binyamin comes from Rachel. Then later on, you find that Mashiach ben Yosef, right? Mietz Hashem, very soon, maybe tomorrow, Mashiach ben Yosef will be. And so you got to know what's so unique about Yosef and Rachel and Yosef. What do they got going for them? That so you find also very interesting Zach. There's a Gemara. The Gemara tells us about Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Yochanan and Yosef had a lot of things in common. A strange situation. First of all, Rabbi Yochanan was a Rosh Yeshiva for 80 years. Yosef was a king in Mitzrayim for 80 years. Yosef was very handsome. All the girls wanted to look at him. Ashes Batifa fell in love with him, right? So he was a very, very handsome guy. Rabbi Yochanan was tremendously beautiful. The Gemara tells us that Rish Lakish jumped across the Yarden because he saw somebody bathing. He thought it was a woman. He set the world's record jumping across the Yarden, only to discover it was Rabbi Yochanan. So he said to Rabbi Yochanan, beauty such as yours should be given to women. So Rabbi Yochanan said, you just set the world's record. Kodesh like yours should be given to Torah. You dedicate yourself to Torah, I'll give you my sister. So that was the deal, and Rish Lakish became one of the greatest Talmidei Chacham at the time. So he was beautiful, and says he went to a house of Rabbi Lazar, was sick, and his face lit up the room. It was such a shine. So that was Rabbi Yochanan, very similar to Yosef. Yosef, all the women wanted to look at him, right? And by Rabbi Yochanan, it says he would sit outside the mikveh, so when women would come out of the mikveh, they would see him and have his image, so they would have children just like him. So a lot of similarities between the two of them. So they asked Rabbi Yochanan once, aren't you afraid of Ein Hara? You sit there by the mikveh so women should stare at you, you'll get Ein Hara. So I don't think he wore a red bracelet or anything like that. So it was the pshat that Herod says, he said, I'm a descendant of Yosef. And Yosef is impervious to Ein Hara. Yosef's children can't have Ein Hara. Why not? Why can't they have Ein Hara? So some say because Yosef stood in front of his mother, so Esau shouldn't see his mother. So he was zoicha through that, and he's not. No one can give him an ein hori. Right? Others say that he was zoicha because Yaakov gave his children a bracha, the yidgul aroi b'kerem. You should be like fish. Fish, you can't give an ein hori because you can't see them, right? You can't see fish. In Denver, there was a place called Hanging Lake. You could see the fish. It was the clearest lake you could imagine. Right? You climb up a mountain, and there was a stream that came to the top. You ever climbed it, Hanging Lake?
You never went there in Estes Park.
What?
We only went to Estes Park.
Oh, and this was further down, near Aspen. But it was you had to climb up to the top of the mountain, like a 12,000-foot mountain. And then there was a lake that came down. It made a hole through the rocks, and came down like a waterfall, and went into this lake. And the lake was so clear you could see the fish in the bottom of the lake. But I'll call upon him. So he said, "But you'd go to be careful as you look through the Atlantic Ocean. You're not going to see the whales and you're not going to see anything. Why? Because they're living the peaceful life underground. Nobody sees anything. You fly over the Atlantic, all you see is green, right? You don't see nothing, right? Meanwhile, underneath the ground, everyone's living happily together. The whales and the sharks and the goldfish are all happily living together, right? So that's the matzah over there. So Yaakov gave a bracha to Yosef that should be like that. So bottom line is that Yosef was impervious to ein hori, but why? So he got a bracha, but there's a midah over here that you have to understand that gave Yosef this. The teretz is that Yosef represents and Rachel represents the concept of ayin tova, having a good eye, to see the positive, right? And not to be, sometimes you see somebody has something and you get upset, you get jealous, right? Yosef and the children of Rachel never had that. What's the pshat? Rachel gave away the simonim to Leah. Leah's going to take over. You're going to lose out, right? But she didn't see it that way. She just saw that's the way Hashem wants it. That's the way it'll be. She gives away the simonim to Leah. She has this ayin toiva that she's willing to share it. She gives it away. There's no shaila. Ayin toiva is this moiridik gezach that Yosef had, and you find his descendants. What happens is Yaakov is giving a bracha to Ephraim and Menashe. So Yaakov puts one hand, the right hand on Ephraim, the left hand on Menashe. So Yosef, wait a second, Tati, you got it wrong. So Yaakov says, don't worry. They're both great, but this one's going to be great. So if I was Menashe, I would have said to Yaakov, you're going to make that mistake again. You know what happened the last time you made that mistake? You had a lot of aggravation. What are you going to do it again for? Menashe doesn't say a word. Menashe has no tinus because he has an ayin toiva. Right? If that's what you want to give a Frank, I'm comfortable with that. That's what's supposed to be an ayin toiva. He has this koyach of ayin toiva. And so, what is Esav's koyach? Esav comes with 400 men. What is the gematria of ayin ra? 400, obviously, right? So ayin ra is 400. So Esav comes with 400 men, which represents his koich of ayin ra. Because what's the koich of Esav? It says akol koich hayadayim yedei Esav. What is the gematria of yedei Esav? 400. Okay, it's part. Esav is 376, and yedei is 24. So 360 and 24 is 400, right? So Esav has ayin. His yedei Esav is ayin ra. Right?
Is there a correlation that Esav and Shalom is also 376? You just mentioned Esav is 376, Shalom is also 376. Is there
376? That I don't know. So what does Yaakov do? Yaakov sends presents to Esav, right? So he tells the people living the presents that leave revach ben eder leeder, leave space. Why? Lisboya einav shel oisei rasha. So he should look and get excited, right? You look. All of a sudden, there's a herd of sheep coming over the horizon. Wow. And then a little bit later, he looks up and there's a herd of buffalo coming over the horizon. Wow. He looks again, there's a herd of rhinoceri coming over the horizon, right? And this is unbelievable, right? And he's watching, so the space between, he keeps on seeing, you wait a little bit longer, then the next thing comes, wait a little longer, the next. So you want to satiate, you want to take care of his eyes. That's the problem. He's got ayin ra. We want to take care of the ayin ra by giving him something to be excited about. So that's the Yedayim Yedei Esav. So Yosef, Yaakov says, I have Yosef now. Yosef is the son of Rachel. Yosef was gifted with this ayin toiv to see other people and not have kindness, not be an ayin toiv. Ebarzei, I can defeat Esav. And that's the Yisoid for him. You find this also by Ephraim. Ephraim, Achiti, he talked very big. He's going to give a Morisa Machpelah. Second, Yaakov took some money out of his pocket. Ephraim wanted to have it, right? So at that point, they write Ephraim's name without a vav. What's Ephraim's name without a vav? 400, right? How much money did Avraham give Ephraim? 400, right? So you see, this is a way you have to deal with ayin ra. Is you got to somehow subsume it, right? So there's a beautiful story with a yid came to Bells for Shavuos. You heard the story? I told it many times, right? So Bells, people went for Shavuos, and for Yontav, he went to the Belzer Rebbe. Friedrich Belzer Rebbe, Sar Sholem, or maybe. Anyway, so one yid comes to Bells. He's been traveling the whole year doing business. Comes in to tell to the Bells, and he goes to say Shalom Aleichem to the Rebbe. First you come in, you find your apartment where you're staying for Yontiv. Then you go to the Rebbe, you say Shalom Aleichem, and you come back, you get ready for Yontiv, you go to the mikveh. So he comes back to his apartment, or to his room, and he discovers all his money is missing. It's all money from the whole winter that he's been traveling, and he's going from town to town. He's a Malamed. All that money is gone. He goes going crazy. He runs back to the Rebbe, says, Rebbe, my money was stolen. Someone stole my money. So the Rebbe says, get me Big Moshe. The Big Moshe comes in, and the Rebbe says, Moshe, find out who stole his money and get his money back. So Moshe says, what do you think I am, a detective? He says, you just became one. Go find the money. Moshe is a smart yid. So he knows that in Bells, for Yontiv, there were other Rebbes who used to come, right? The Sar Shalom was the Belzer Rebbe, was a super Rebbe, and these were, lower level Rebbes, right? They didn't have the same amount of, so Moshe keeps his eyes open, and sure enough, he sees the Abba Profina Rebbe's coming. So he goes over to the Abba Profina Rebbe, and he says, Rebbe, can I be Mishamish you in the next few days? He says, go. And so he takes the Rebbe to his place where he's staying, and he helps him get ready to go to the mikveh, and he takes him to the Rebbe, to the Belzer Rebbe, and then they go to the mikveh, and he helps him, get his shoes back on, and then he takes him back to his room, and the Rebbe's getting dressed for Yontiv, and then Moshe stands up, he stands by the door, he says, Rebbe, you're not leaving this room till you tell me who stole this year's money. He says, Mr. Meshiga, I should know who stole somebody's money. He says, you're a Rebbe, and you know everything. If you don't tell me who stole the money, you're not leaving this room. He says, well, you can't do that to me. He says, I'm doing it. Right? So he says, okay, I'll tell you on the condition you don't tell anybody how you found out. He says, okay, it was this and this yid. So Moshe goes, finds that yid, picks him up, holds him up against the ceiling. He says, give me the money. Guy is Moida, and he gives him the money. And Moshe goes and gives it back to the yid. He goes to the Rebbe. He says, I did the shlichus. So the Rebbe says, how'd you find out? So he says, I can't tell. He says, what do you mean you can't tell? No, I can't tell. He says, you're going to tell me or you get the Nobel's Prize, right? So he tells him, okay, the Abba Rafina Rebbe told him. Okay, the next day by the Tish, or whatever it was, the Rebbe's sitting there in the front, and he's surrounded by the Abba Rafina Rebbe, the Advila Rebbe, the Tylenol Rebbe, all the Rebbes next to him. And so he says to the Abba Rafina, he says, Zugmir, how did you figure out who stole the money? He said, ich bin euch that Rebbe, and I saw when I came to say Shalom, I saw the Yid in front of me writing a kvittel. As ich bin a Rebbe, I can also read a kvittel. And I read his kvittel, and I can see by his handwriting, and it's gewein a Ganav. So I put two and two together, and figured there. So the Belzer Rebbe said to him, this is Hamoishas, Hamish Hamoishas. But I have a bigger Moishas. He said, ever since I'm a kid, I can never see a bad thing in a Yid. I can never see Schlechtigkeit by a Yid. That's my moifus. I could never have found the Ganav. Could never see. There's the Ayin Toiva is a Moira de Gazach. You have to. Rabbi Zalman Meltzer once on Cholamoid Sukkos told one of his Talmidim to get him a paper and pencil. He has to write something down. So the Talmud said, Rabbi, remember, it's Cholamoid Sukkos. You don't write. So he says, Zog to his Pikuach Nefesh. Okay, so he ran to get a paper and pencil, Pikuach Nefesh, this doctor's number, the number of Atzola, who knows what. Gives him the paper. He writes a pasuk and he puts it in his drawer. So the Talmud was a little bit, couldn't figure out. You need to write a pasuk and put it in the drawer. That's Pikuach Nefesh. The Talmud didn't ask him anything. At the end of the day, he said, it's not a chutzpah, but why did you write a pasuk on a piece of paper? I thought it was a sakonis nefashis. I thought it was Pikuach Nefesh. So Mrs. Zalman says to me, you should know. What do Yidden do in Eretz Yisrael Cholamoid? They don't have great adventure, right? So what do? Cholamoid? They go visit Rebbes. They go visit Gedolim, right? So I got all the people come to me. He says, my problem is I can size up a person very quickly. I look him in the face, I can size them up. But I don't want to see chesroinus in people. I don't want to look at people and see anything negative. So I have a pasuk I look at every few minutes. It says, when you look at the guy across from you, look at yourself instead. Just like when you look at yourself, you see just good. That's how you should look at other people. He says, for me, I can't let myself become a negative person. That's Pikuach Nefesh. You become a negative person. You see chesroinus in other people. Your kids will bring home a report, got straight A's and 1 D, and you'll scream at them, right? You can't see chesroinus. I mean, sometimes you have to notice them, but you can't always. I don't want to see chesroinus. I want to see mindless. For me, that's Pikuach Nefesh. So that was the Yesod for him. But you find, and it says that V'hoya, it says in Yetz Hashem in the future, Beis Yaakov la'esh, Beis Yosef l'hava, Beis Esav l'kash. What's the gematria of kash? 400. What does kash stand for? Kina and sinna. That's what leads to Ein Hara, right? You're jealous of people, you hate people because you see the bad in people. So that's Yosef's koyach, is to fight. Beis Yosef is lahava, and then Beis Esav is lakash. But it's a fascinating thing. We find that with the way that Yaakov won over Yosef was he bowed down to him 7 times. Now, Emes is there's a Gemara in Masechtas Brachos. The Gemara in Masechtas Brachos says that when I think it was Rav Acha whatever came to learn by the yeshiva of Abaya. Now, the Gemara tells us in Kedushin that at that time, where Abaya was, there was a mazik. Today you don't have this kind of thing, but I'm old. There were mazikim, shadim, and they would mamish kill people. They would do terrible things to people, and so people were mamish getting hurt. Abaya knew that this Rav Acha, if he comes, he'll know how to deal with him. So he told the people in the city, there's a Yid Rav Acha coming, nobody should let him stay in their house. Force him to sleep in the base medrash. Sleep himself in the base medrash, the mazik will come, and he'll know how to deal with him. Okay, so he shows up in town, nobody gives him achsanya, he sleeps in the base medrash. The Gemara says that all of a sudden, middle of the night, the mazik shows up. It appeared to him as a snake with 7 heads. The Shiva Rishvasa, whatever, it was a snake with 7 heads. So every time Rav Acha bowed down, one of the heads fell off. Until after 7 Hishtachavoyas, there were no more heads. So that was it, right? He won the face-off, and that was it. No more heads. Okay, so I'll call upon him. So the next morning, he told Abaya, don't try this again. You could have gotten me in trouble. He says, no, I know what I was dealing with. So anyway, Sefer HaMakna in the Masechtas Kedushin, it says that this Rav Acha was like, he was a descendant of Yaakov Avinu for Shteitzach, and he had the koyach, And just like Yaakov bowed down to Esav 7 times to get rid of his koiches atuma, so too he bowed down to this 7 times to get rid of it. So the Makli goes on, and he says a fascinating thing. He says, Yitzchak, what's the gematria of Yitzchak? 208. 208. Now, how many times does 26 go into 208? 8 times. So Yitzchak has within himself 8 times the Shem Havaya, 8 koiches of Hashem HaKadosh Baruch Hu. He gives over to Yaakov 7 brachas. Yitin L'chol L'kim Yital L'shma Mishmani 7 brachas. What is 7 times 26? 182. What is the gematria of Yaakov? 182. Very good. So Yaakov gets 7 of the Shemus Havai of Yitzchak. Esav comes in and he says, what happened to the brachas? They gave him away. So Esav starts crying. He says, "Habrocha achas yesh lechov." You still have one more Shem Havai left, right? So he says, "Give me it. Bench me. Give me that bracha." So what is the gematria of Esav? 376. Now, if you take the word Tomei, right? Tomei is gematria 50, right? Tes Mem Aleph is 50. What's 7 times 50? 350. Esav had 7 koiches of Tomei. This is 350. But he also had 1 Shem Havai that he got from Yitzchak. What's 26 plus 350? 376. That's Esav, right? So Esav has the koiches of Tumah that Esav has, plus that Shem Havai that Yitzchak gave him. So Yaakov, what does Yaakov do? He bows down 7 times. And just like the snake knocked off one of the heads of the Bavachim knocked one head, every time Yaakov bowed down, he knocked off one of the koiches of Tumah, right? So what happens? The Tumah's gone. What's left? Just the Shem Havai. What does it say? Ad gishtoi ad ochiv. What's the gematria of ochiv? 26. Mela, what was left was just ochiv, and so that's when they hugged and embraced. And so now you put Esav's 26 with Yaakov's 182, and you have Yitzchak. You have so now Yosef is what's the gematria of Yosef? 156, which is the gematria, which is 6 times the Shem Havai, right? And what does it say? Olam Moshe Bahar Tzion. Tzion is 156. Lishboit is Har Esav. That's how Yosef is able to conquer.
No, he bowed down to Esau or bowed down to HaKadosh Baruch Hu?
No, Yaakov bowed down to Esav. So why did he bow down to Esav? So he was trying to placate him, whatever. He was deeper. He was trying to get rid of his tumah, trying to bring out.
This is the way to do it.
It's the way to do it. So there's a Maisa that there was a Rav who came to the city of Shadik in Europe, and he figured, he's an older yid. He wants to, he sort of wants to retire, but he doesn't want to retire. So he went to a small town. He figured it'd be a small town. I'll learn most of the day. And every once in a while, yid will come with a shaila, a paskin here and there, but it couldn't be too difficult. He becomes a rav there. Now there was a yid in that town, and he was a moiser, and he made life miserable for everybody. And he did what he wanted. People were so scared of him that he got everything he wanted. He controlled the city, and people were just scared. And he knew if you start up with him, he goes to you're gonna be taken care of. So shortly after this Rav comes to town, this guy, his name was Gruncy, he goes to the marketplace, and there's a farmer brought his wares. And he's selling fruits, and Gruncy takes a bag and starts taking fruits. And then he starts walking away. The farmer says, "Wait a second, you didn't pay." He says, "Gruncy doesn't pay." He says, "What do you mean?" He says, "Gruncy doesn't pay, goodbye." So the guy says, "Wait, I'm not going to let this happen." He says, "I'm going to the Rav." So he goes to the Rav. He says, "This guy Gruncy came, takes praise, Gruncy doesn't pay. What's going on over here?" So the Rav calls the Shabbos. He says to the Shabbos, "Bring Gruncy to a din Torah." So the Shabbos says, "Rebbe, you're new in town. Just leave him alone." He says, "No. He's coming to a din Torah. He stole money. He stole papers. He's got to pay." He says, "Rebbe, you don't want to do this." you want a job? Go get Grunzi. Otherwise, I can get somebody else to take over. So he goes, he tells Grunzi, the Rav wants to see you for the entire. Says, tell the Rav to drop dead. So the Rav says, that's the last thing I plan on doing, right? Go back and tell Grunzi he better come to within Torah. And so Grunzi again refuses. Okay. Shabbos comes. The minute was that Grunzi got called up for Shlishi every Shabbos. He sat on the Mizrach bank, and he got Shlishi. So Grunzi goes up and gets a Shlishi instead of the Rav. The Rav walks up to him, and slaps him across the face. Nobody ever did anything like that to him. Grunzi's walking out of the shul, and everybody is scared because they know we're finished. And Grunzi goes, I'm going to get even. I'm going to get even with everyone. So the whole stud is now up in arms. They figure we got this Rav, who does he think he is? Everything was nice. We just have to deal with Grunzi. Now we got a problem. It's going to be... Anyway, a week goes by. The Rav is going with his shamas to a nearby town to do a bris milah. They're riding in the forest. And all of a sudden, they see in front of them a whole bunch of soldiers following Grunzi into the woods on their way to the city. So the shaman starts saying, Vidui, and he thinks it's all over. And the Rav is very calmly looking at Grunzi, and Grunzi comes closer and closer. And just as he gets mamish up to the Rav, he jumps off his horse, kneels on the floor, and he begs the Rav Mechila. And the Rav says, Amoichel you, talks to him, and Grunzi leaves, never to be seen again. So he asked the Rav, what's the shot? He said, you have to understand. Yaakov bowed down to Esau to make shalom. You have to understand this guy. Why is he so miserable? I was thinking to myself, well, what a tragedy. How can a yid be so tzibruchen and he hates people and he cheppers with people and he's moiser on people? Why did this happen? Probably when he was in pre-1A, right? Somebody made fun of him because he played with the girls. Or they didn't let him share with the fire engine. And so now he was angry. Then people did invite him to their birthday party. So he hated them. And then, one thing led to the next. And he made his bar mitzvah and he didn't invite anybody. And who knows what. And people laughed at him, made fun of him. He was wearing a hand-me-down shirt and his pants were torn. And who knows what, So he became a fabit to the man. She is a person he could have been an Adam Gadol. And so I'm thinking the whole time, I feel bad for him. It's a brach in a mensch. It's a broken person. You think he likes being who he is, right? And so, K'mayim panim el panim, Grunzi felt that lava, and therefore he gave him. So the same thing Yaakov understood Esav, bowed down to Esav. He understood Esav's challenges. We have to understand each other, and that's the ayin toiv that has that quality. So there's one person you find, aside from Yosef, who had this ayin toiv. Rabbi Akiva always looked at things positively. Right? He saw the fox running through the Kodesh HaKadoshim. So what did Rabbi Akiva do? He laughed. Why? Because the nevuah that the foxes will roam in the Malkim HaMikdash came true. So the nevuah of Oid Yesh was a Cain, that'll also come true. When the base of Mikdash was destroyed, what did Rabbi Akiva say? Right? You don't have to go to you don't need the base of Mikdash. Hashem will take care of you on Yom Kippur. Right? What does that keep say? Right? Love everybody. Why? Look at the good in people. What's the gematria of Rabbi Akiva? 401. Akiva transcends the ayin ra. That was the koyach of Rabbi Akiva. He had the koyach to go beyond, and that was his greatness. Now, in order to say this word, this sefer I saw this, it really is supposed to sell Rabbi Akiva with a hay. Not with an olive. That was brought out. So, hey, look, if you're trying to figure it out, that's the problem. Okay, so that's the Yisayid environment. The koyach of ayin toiv, the koyach that overcomes the ayin ra of Esav, the yadayim yadei Esav. That's what we had to be in Mitzrayim 400 years. So the Umay Sa'olim shouldn't have kindness for us as Klal Yisrael. They should look at us, why you the chosen people. We put in that 400 years to take care of Ayin Ra, right? The gematria of Eretz Loy Lohem is 400. Right? With the koil, with a kol ponim, that's the Yisayid environment. Okay.